Welcome to another Assa Abloy Academy webinar. Today's webinar is going to be on Rixson's floor closers. My name is Russell Corriveau and I will be your lead instructor today. This session will take about 45 minutes, give or take 10 minutes. During the session, your lines will be muted. However, you can pose questions as we go along using the question and answer icon. And we will reserve time at the end of the presentation for your questions. This session is being recorded and will be available within 24 hours for your viewing. Also within 24 hours, you will receive an email showing your proof of attendance to this webinar that can be given to your employer or one of the industry association partners such as ALOA or DHI for CEUs in lieu of a certificate of completion. In addition, Assa Abloy Academy offers over 50 online classes, all at no cost. To get started, simply join the Academy and start learning at your own pace. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at Rixson's closers. Okay. Rixson is known for making floor closers and pivots. They're also known for making concealed closers. When trying to decide the right type of closer for an application, there are many things you need to consider. Is it the main entrance of a building? Does the door need to swing to 90 degrees or 180 degrees? How often is the door going to be used? How heavy is the door? What's the function of the door? These are just a few of the questions that need to be answered when trying to decide what the best way to hang a door. But one of the very first questions that you need to ask is, when choosing between a door closer and a pivot, the most important question, does the door need to be self-closing? And if the door needs to be self-closing, a floor closer is the correct option because pivots are not self-closing. And as I mentioned before, Rixson offers both floor closers and overhead concealed closers. And they can handle doors up to 250 pounds. And especially any doors, especially if they're over 250 pounds, floor closers are your very best option. Overhead concealed closers are ideal for lighter doors and where concealment above the door is desired. Some perfect applications for the Rixson floor closers are extra heavy doors, lead line doors, high frequency doors, doors subject to a lot of abuse, where security is a priority, and where beauty is a factor because it's completely hidden away, which is a really nice thing about floor closers. Here are a few more advantages when it comes to floor closers. First off, they're the most efficient because the door is attached directly to the main arm of the closer. So therefore, they're the most efficient type of closer out of all. It ensures longer life for the door and the frame because keep in mind, with floor closers, the door is no longer hanging on the frame. The weight of the door is entirely on the floor. Okay, and now the screws are going to be in shear, which means it's going to last longer. Floor closers require lower maintenance. They can handle greater weight capacities. And one really nice advantage with floor closers is it allows for vertical adjustment. And you don't have that with most other means of hanging doors, but it does allow for vertical adjustment. And aesthetically, it's more pleasing because it's completely out of the way. There's only one major drawback when it comes to floor closers, and that is that you need to plan ahead because floors need to be prepped to accept floor closers, and doors need to be prepped to accept pivots opposed to standard 4.5 by 4.5 butt hinges. Okay, so longer life. Sorry, should have clicked through these. Lower maintenance, greater weight capacity, and you do have that vertical adjustment, and it's completely out of the way. So there are basically two different types of offset closers, or there's center hung closers and there's offset closers. Okay, the first one we're going to take a look at is the offset closers. These are designed to handle doors from anything from 100 pounds all the way up to 1,750 pounds, which is a huge door. The standard offset is going to be 3/4 of an inch off the face of the door, but they also offer some of the floor closers with 1.5 inch offset, and we'll be touching on those shortly. Special layouts are available from Rixson. They will work with you for all different types of door openings. And these are available for fire rated openings. And these will usually use an intermediate pivot. And that's going to be a pivot mounted at the center of the door. Center hung pivots are for doors between 100 and 1,000 pounds. The pivot is always mounted directly on the center line of this door. And this is where aesthetics is of the foremost because it's not visible at all. Keep in mind with offset pivots, you do see the knuckle of the pivot when the door is closed. With center hung pivot, it's underneath the door completely, so it's completely not visible. And keep in mind, the nice thing with center hung pivots, you can also move the location of the pivot if you plan ahead. You can also do special layouts for them, but center hung pivots are not available for fire rated openings. Okay. Next, we're going to take a look at Rixson's heavy duty closers. Okay. Here's just a few views of some floor closers because a lot of people don't ever notice floor closers, but here's a couple different looks at the different floor closers. And here I'm showing you both a center hung floor closer and an offset closer. As I mentioned, they're the highest efficiency of every type of any type of closer. You have a built-in dead stop is built into the closer, so you don't need additional stops for this. Hold open is going to be at the same location as the dead stop, which is nice. You don't have to push it past the dead stop. It's at the same location as the hold open position. It ensures longer life. And of course, the springs are fully adjustable. And here you're going to be using a torsion spring opposed to a compression spring. Okay. So with floor closers, as we mentioned, there's either offset or there's center hung. With offset closers, there's 3 points of contact. You have the top pivot, you have the floor closer, and you have an intermediate pivot. What I'm showing you there in the two pictures on the right side, those are intermediate pivots, and those are used with offset closers. With center hung closers, it's only 2 points of contact, and that's at the very top of the door and at the very bottom of the door. I thought these pictures gave a nice visual on the difference between a center hung opposed to an offset. On the left-hand side is the offset. Yes, the door is invisible, but you can see that you could see the knuckle of the hinge or a knuckle of the closer. While with the center hung, it's right mounted in the center of the door. As we mentioned previously, as we discussed previously, the standard offset is 3/4 of an inch. And this pivot point is 3/4 of an inch from the heel of the door, and it's 3/4 of an inch off the face of the door. Some offset pivot closes are available with an 1.5 inch offset. The pivot point is still 3/4 of an inch from the heel of the door, but the dimension from the face of the door is going to be 1.5 inches. This is applications where this is going to be used is where you're going to have something mounted to the face of the door. Okay, this is not designed for thicker doors or solid doors. This is just designed if you're going to have some type of facade on the front of the door, because it's going to make sure that you're mounting into the door itself and not into the facade. And that's the reason they have the 1.5 inch extension on that. Okay. One thing you need to remember is with the offset, it does affect the opening. You must use a door opener wider than 36 inches to get a minimum 32-inch clear opening to meet ADA requirements if you're using an 1.5 inch offset. So keep in mind, as you see there in the picture there, if you're using a 3/4 inch offset, it interferes with the door's opening 3.25 inches. And if you have a 36-inch wide opening, it still allows for the 32-inch clear opening. But once you move up to an 1.5 inch offset, it cuts into the door opening 4 inches, and therefore you no longer meet the ADA requirement of a 32-inch clear opening. When trying to determine which closer to select, there's a number of things to need to be considered. Once again, is it interior or exterior? What is the floor made out of? Is it a slab? Is it marble, or is it something else? What is the size of the door? How thick is the door? What's the construction of the door? And does the door need to be single acting, or is it going to be double acting? Then the application needs to be selected. Will it be offset or center hung, or an independent hung, which some of you may not be familiar with, and we'll be talking about that shortly. As part of this course, we're going to examine what it takes to install a floor closer in various applications. The first video we're going to show you is what it takes to prepare the concrete for an offset floor closer. Let's take a look what it takes. Oh, sorry. I apologize. I forgot to click through some of these different things you need to consider when selecting the closer. And then the different types of closers are offset, center hung, and independent hung, and depending on the weight of it. Okay, next we're going to take a look at what it takes to install into an existing slab.
Installing a floor closer, the most accurate and least expensive way is to make the closer cavity after the door frame is set. For a new or existing slab installation, the walls are up and the frame is in place. The most important thing for any door installation, whether it is using pivots and floor closers or hinges and surface closers, is making sure the frame is completely square. In this stage of construction, correction of a bad frame alignment is easier to remedy than checking after the doors bind or the finished flooring is in place. Never assume that the frame is square and plumb. Verify it. Use the product template and Quick Spotter pivot locator to mark off the location of the pivot or floor closer spindle. In this example, a 3/4 of an inch offset floor closer is being installed. Mark the dimensions 3/4 of an inch from the inside of the frame and 3/4 of an inch in front of the frame. Referring to the blocking instructions and product template, you will add 1 inch extra space around and under for the cutout. Be aware that on offset hung products, the hole will be cut under the frame. The drilling spot should be very clearly marked. It is then sprayed with clear coat so the lines will not be erased by foot traffic. This step allows the floor preparation to be done later, perhaps by other tradesmen. The fastest way to create the hole is a core driller. This piece of equipment is common on job sites, so its use can be easily worked into the door hanging schedule. This video shows the use of the driller, but it can also be done by a pavement breaking hammer. Here, the drill operator will determine the size of the boring bit that he feels is better suited. A larger one will make very fast work of the bulk of the hole, but the amount remaining will take more jackhammer time. He has decided to use the smaller bit. The slide of the rig is marked for the depth needed to accommodate the closer cement case. With the cooling water of the core driller, there's a lot less dust than when a jackhammer is used. Once the drilling is done, the jackhammer finishes off the job. If rebar is inside the hole, it must be removed to make way for the cement case. Even though you are cutting rebar, the cement case installation bars will replace them. Verify that the hole is adequate for the cement case, leaving space on all 5 surfaces for the setting concrete. Install the closer body in the cement case. Attach the leveling straps. Using the pivot locator, again, drop the closer into the cavity and line it up. Use the jam portion of the top pivot and an alignment tool with a plumb bob to continue the final placement of the closer.
Next, we're going to take a look at some of Rixson's heavy-duty offset floor closers. The first one we have is the 2700. It's their most popular floor closer. It can handle doors up to 450 pounds and does have a positive dead stop. They also offer the 27-180, which is very similar to the 27, except it does allow the door to swing 180 degrees. They also offer the 20 series, which is designed to handle lighter doors, doors up to about 200 pounds. And once again, this will allow the door to swing 180 degrees. The 20 series is designed basically for retrofit work applications, not for new construction. These closers are all handed, and they do allow for vertical adjustment. A few more closers is the 127 floor closer is for applications where vertical adjustment of the door at the installation isn't possible. And this is for such doors where the doors are inset, so there's no room above the door to lift the door up and drop it down on top of the door closer. Okay, so a couple things that's special about this is that it has a tapered spindle and a unique bottom arm. The 427 is used where the vertical movement isn't possible, once again, just like the 127. But the 127 also has a tapered spindle and a unique bottom arm to allow it to be installed easily. This uses a 427 top arm for the deep reveal. So it is slightly different. This is interesting. This one, notice it's an L27. This is once again for very, very heavy doors. The L27 is designed for lead line doors or very heavy doors or high traffic doors. It has additional thrust bearings in it for the heavier load. Both the L27-180, just like the L27, allows the door to swing 180 degrees, but these are, since they're made for lead-lined doors, you'll notice that the mounting holes in the bottom arm are straddling the center line of the door, because they always put the lead lining in the center line of the door, and therefore the mounting screws will not affect the lead lining, and that's why the L is in front, specifying that they're for lead line doors. Okay. The next option is an interesting one. This is for hollow metal doors with, and this uses special 4.5 by 4.5 3/4 inch hinges. These hinges are unique due to the offset. Standard hinges won't work for this application. This is for hollow metal doors, so you can use a standard hollow metal door with a standard hinge preps, but then you have the advantages of the floor closer. The Q27 and the QT27 are designed for applications for surface mounted bottom arm is preferred. This type of arm allows the closer to remove without demounting the door, which is nice, so you can actually remove the door closer. The T27, or excuse me, the Q27 is shipped with a floor plate for threshold applications. So specify QT Q, you get a floor plate with, and if it's for a threshold application, you're going to be specifying QT27. Next, we're going to take a look at what it takes to install a Rixson offset closer. And part of the description in this course is what it takes to install a Rixson closer. So let's take a look.
To begin, insert the closer into the cement case and secure it tightly with the supplied screws. Attach the leveling strap to the top of the closer with screws. With the framing square, check to make certain the door frame is square at both top and bottom corners. Install the jam leaf of the top pivot onto the header. Slide the aligning tool insert into the frame portion of the top pivot and tighten it with the provided Allen wrench. Slip the aligning tool body over the insert and tighten it. Insert the plumb line through the pivot alignment body and pull an adequate amount of line to allow the bob to almost reach the floor. Make sure the frame is square again by measuring the distance from the line to the inside of the frame at the top and bottom. Also, measure from the outside of the frame, bottom and top. Lower the closer into the floor, suspended by the straps. Place the pivot locator over the spindle and move the closer into position adjacent to the frame. Position the closer so that the center of the spindle is aligned with the plumb bob. Confirm that the cement case is square to the opening. Insert the leveling screws. Place the bubble level on top of the spindle. Make sure the body is level by using the leveling screws. Double check with the torpedo level. When the closer is accurately aligned, pour quick dry cement into the cavity. You'll need enough to completely fill the gap beneath the closer case and attain a depth of approximately 1/2 inch up from the bottom of the case. While the cement sets, attach all needed hardware to the door. First, install the door portion of the top pivot. Install the door portion of the intermediate pivot. Next, attach the bottom arm to the underside of the door. Once the cement has set, it will be time to hang the door. Remove installation tools. Place the spacer washer on the spindle. Position the door above the closer and lower the arm onto the spindle. Use a crescent wrench to rotate the spindle while moving the door back and forth. After a few twists, the door should work its way down onto the spindle. Align the door and frame portions of the top pivot. Install the pivot pin with the hole aiming downward. Push the pin up into the jam portion of the pivot. Screw the cap onto the pivot. The cap holds the pin in place. Prop the door open at 90 degrees. Slip the jam section of the intermediate pivot into the corresponding door-mounted part of the pivot. Now, fasten the jam section to the frame. To do this may require you to temporarily create additional separation between the door and the frame. Notice how the installer in the video is putting a moderate amount of torque on the pry bar to create a bigger gap between the door and jam. The pivot should now snap into place. Allow the door to close. All of the weight should be resting on the bottom arm. To ensure this, we utilize the intermediate pivot. First, remove the cap on the intermediate pivot. There is an Allen screw inside the pivot. Turning this screw raises the door. Two 1/16 inch C shims are provided. Fill the gap between the arm and spindle washer with one or both. The flat inner edge of the shim should contact the flat side of the spindle. Tap the shim into place underneath the closer arm. Relieve the weight from the intermediate pivot by turning the adjusting screw in a counterclockwise direction. This will lower the door to rest on the closer. This is very important because the weight of the door needs to be on the closer, not on the intermediate pivot and jam. Replace the pivot cap. Take a look at the gap between the door and frame. The gap should be consistent along the entire perimeter. Tighten the arm locking screw until you actually feel it contact the spindle. Open the door again and let it close. Move the door back and forth while completely tightening the arm locking screw. Now it's time to fine-tune the closer control valves for optimal door performance. The latch speed valve controls the door during the last 10 degrees of travel prior to latching. A door's travel speed at this point is critical to overcome weather stripping, latch bolts, and stack pressures. The closing speed valve controls the door from full open to about 10 degrees. You will want to set this to a speed you feel most comfortable with. The back check valve adjusts the amount of hydraulic resistance that begins at about 70 degrees in the opening cycle. Back check should never be turned to a point where it acts as a dead stop for the door. The closer in this installation has a selective hold open feature that allows the door to be a hold open or non-hold open model. Always adjust the closing speed first. Next, set the latch speed, and finally, back check. These valves are very sensitive. Slight adjustments will generally do the trick.
Hopefully that video gave you a good idea of what it takes to install an offset floor closer. Here, I just wanted you to take a quick look at some of the top pivots because they do offer a wide variety of top pivots. The most standard one is the 180, but they also have surface mounted ones. They offer a wide variety. Here's a quick look at the intermediate pivots. Don't forget, these are the ones that are going to be mounted at the center of the door. So here, once again, you have full mortised, half surface, full surface. So there's a whole variety available. And keep in mind, if you need to electrify a door that's going to be hung on pivots, you need to get the electricity from the frame to the door, and that's going to be done with the intermediate pivot. And they do offer electrified intermediate pivots. Okay, they're offered only for 1 3/4 inch thick doors, and they're available with either 4, 6, 8, or 12 wires running through it for both fire rated and non-fire rated. Next, we're going to take a quick look at center hung pivots. The pivot is once again centered on the thickness of the door. The pivot can be moved closer to the lock edge if desired, and is used on a case open frame. A case open frame has no door stop. It can either be used as a single acting or a double acting when they're center hung. And for single acting applications, a door stop is going to be required to be added to the frame to stop the door. And depending on the depth of the frame, you are going to limit how much the door can swing open. And usually the limit is around 130 degrees. Keep in mind, center hung pivots cannot be used on fire rated doors, or center hung closers cannot be used on fire rated doors. And once again, center hung closers are not recommended for residential doors. Here we're just showing you a few different applications for center hung closers. Floor closer sets include a top pivot and a floor closer and the hardware required for that for center hung closers. And once again, they can either be double acting, so they swing in both directions, or they can be single acting. You cannot use an intermediate pivot with center hung closers. And once again, not available for fire rated doors. And just like with all closers, you want to consider the weight capacity of the door, the size of the door, the construction of the door, the thickness and the type of the door. One nice huge advantage with center hung closers is it does give you a nice option on mounting glassed panels and specialty applications. So let's take a look at a few of the different ones. The 28 series is a center hung closer, single acting closer, can handle doors up to 350 pounds. For very, very heavy doors, they have the H28, which can handle doors up to 1,000 pounds. If you're looking for it to be electrified, the EH28 can handle doors up to 500 pounds and is desired for through wire applications, so you can run wire to the door. All three of these closers are non-handed, and they have built-in dead stops. They do have separate valves for closing, latching, and back check, just like the offset closers do. And they do have a selectable hold open feature. So if you want the door to hold open, you can either turn that off or turn it on. Always be aware that the door height, especially with center hung closers, Rixson recommends for really tall doors, they recommend offset closers rather than center hung closers. Next, some center hung closers for glass doors. So the 328 and the 428 floor closers are center hung specialty closers made for glass doors. They're both single acting and handed. They're used on interior or exterior doors, and they're used with patch fittings, and they can handle doors up to 325 pounds. And door sizes from 38 inches up to 8 feet tall. The big difference between the 328 is that it doesn't include the top arm or the top pivot. This closer is designed to be used with patch fittings by others. Okay, so the 328 is you're going to be using it with patch fittings by others. Both closers have built-in positive dead stops to prevent the door from swinging beyond the desired opening point. And you can specify whether you want it to be 85, 90, 95, or 105 degrees. They are also available as non-hold open or selectable hold open. Okay, keep in mind, these are not available for fire rated doors. And the 428 patch fittings are made for tempered glass from 3/8 of an inch all the way up to a 1/2 inch thick door. Here we're looking at the center hung top pivots for the different applications. You see there? So they even have some for earthquake tolerant zones where they have longer pins, so if the building shakes too much, they won't separate. Next, we're going to take a quick look at independent hung doors. For concealed floor closers, for doors that are going to be hung by either butt hinges, pocket hinges, or continuous hinges. This closer is designed for 1 3/4 inch thick doors only, and this closer is not supporting the weight of the door. The weight of the door is going to be on the frame. So you're doing this so you can have the advantages of a floor closer. Okay. The 327 is used for interior or exterior doors, doors up to 4 feet wide and 250 pounds with a maximum door opening of 180 degrees. This is going to be used with hanging methods by others. Okay, so because it's center hung, it slides on that. So you're going to be using hanging methods by others. Next, we're going to be taking a look at what it takes to install a Rixson center hung closer.
Unlike the offset product's rabbeted frame, this frame has no stop. In opening, the door edge moves away from the frame. This Model 28 closer is single acting and requires an applied stop on the lock edge. Center hung closers can also be double acting. A center hung door must have radiused edges. With a long level and a framing square, check to make certain the door frame is square at both top and bottom corners. Install the jamb portion of the top pivot into the header. Using adjusting screws, lower the pivot pin. Slide the aligning tool with the attached plumb line onto the pivot pin and tighten it with a tightening screw. Insert the closer into the cement case and secure it tightly with the supplied screws. Masking tape will prevent cement from getting between the closer body and the cement case. Attach the metal straps to the top of the closer with screws. Insert the leveling screws. Make sure the frame is plumb and square again. Lower the closer into the floor, suspended by the straps. Place the spindle locator over the spindle and move the closer into position adjacent to the frame. The locator is only used when the pivot point is 2 3/4 inches from the frame. Position the closer so that the center of the spindle is aligned with the plumb bob. Confirm that the cement case is square to the opening. Place the bubble level on top of the spindle. Make sure the body is level by using the leveling screws. Double check with the torpedo level. Remove the pivot alignment tool. Remove the pivot locator. Retract the pivot pin. Put the finish plate on the frame portion of the top pivot. Now you are ready to surround the case with cement. Some installers may choose to partially fill the hole with quick-dry cement and test fit the door prior to completing the installation with standard cement. Be sure to use standard rather than quick-dry products. While the cement sets, attach all needed hardware to the door. Begin with installing the door portion of the top pivot. Attach the arm plate in the mortise in the bottom of the door. This is a wood door installation, so an extra plate is attached to the underside of the door. This protects the veneer. On metal doors, this plate is not needed. Install cover plate. Install spindle collar. Lightly turn the closing and latch valves all the way clockwise. Do not over-tighten. Attach the bottom arm to the closer and secure with the spindle screw.
Okay, and now the arm goes on there?
Turn the arm to approximately 30 degrees. Bank the door slightly and set it on the closer arm. Align the door and frame portions of the top pivot. Open the door slightly to gain access to the adjusting screw and turn it clockwise to bring the pivot pin down into the door portion of the top pivot. This closer comes with centering screws in the face of the door. Insert one on each side of the door. If this was a double-acting door, the screws would help center the door in the opening. Prop the door open at 90 degrees. Tighten the arm locking screw. This screw also allows you to move the door laterally towards the lock side of the frame. Back off the latch and closing speed valves. Take a look at the gap between the door and frame. The gap should never be more than 1/8 of an inch. Verify that there is a stop on the frame. Now it's time to fine-tune the closer control valves for optimal door performance. The latch speed valve controls the door during the last 10 degrees of travel prior to latching. A door's travel speed at this point is critical to overcome weather stripping, latch bolts, and stack pressures. The closing speed valve controls the door from full open to about 10 degrees. You will want to set this to a speed you feel most comfortable with. The back check valve adjusts the amount of hydraulic resistance that begins at about 70 degrees in the opening cycle. Back check should never be turned to a point where it acts as a dead stop for the door. The closer in this installation has a selective hold open feature that turns the hold open off or on. Always adjust the closing speed first. Next, set the latch speed.
Next, set the latch speed.
And finally, back check. Slight adjustments will generally do the trick.
Hopefully that gave you a good idea of what it takes to install a center hung closer. Here's just another quick look at center hung closers double acting. For both the 30 and 40 series, they offer the center adjustability. These are centering screws located on the face of the door at the very bottom towards the hinge edge that allows you to center the door so it can zero out. This is very useful in double door applications. Okay, so both the 30 and 40 series closers offer the centering adjustment, which we just spoke about. They're both available with as a non-hold open or as an automatic hold open at 90 degrees or 100 degrees. This does have a maximum door swing of 103 degrees. Auxiliary stop is required for these if they're going to be single acting only. Standard top pivot is going to be the 340 top pivot. The 30 series is designed to handle a maximum door capacity of about 200 pounds, while the 40 series is designed for about 300 pounds. So it has to do with the weight capacity of the two of them. Here's just a quick look at how the center hung top pivot works. Basically, you turn this screw at this end here, and by turning that, it allows the pin to drop down to engage the top of the door, and that's how that works. The model H44 is a double-acting, non-handed floor closer and are designed for interior and exterior applications. This closer can handle up to 1,000 pounds, and for doors up to 8 feet 6 inches high. They have thrust bearings designed to handle greater load capacities. And once again, these are available as non-hold open or automatic hold open. And the nice thing about the arm on the closer is the door is sitting directly on the arm, so it allows maximum strength of the closer. This closer, keep one thing about this closer here, the H40, is it doesn't have the center adjustability. So this would be recommended for single door applications, not double door applications, because you can't adjust it so they line up. Next, we're going to take one quick look at what it takes to install a cement case for installing a door closer.
Using a closer-sized blocking form during the rough pour is a common way to make a hole in the floor to receive the floor closer. The disadvantage to the block method is that you are committing to a closer location before the door, frame, or walls are in place. Although not the best way to prepare for a closer, the blocking form is superior to using an actual cement case for a foundation pour installation. Because of the heaviness of the cement, the lightweight case will rise up when the pour is made. This dramatically affects the final resting place of the new case. Never use a cement case for the rough pour method. If you do choose to use this rough pour method, begin by making a frame or block that is 1 inch larger than the closer cement case on all sides, including the bottom. This frame or block can be made with 1-bys or even styrofoam. If a cement case is not available, those perimeter dimensions can be retrieved from the product installation sheets. When making the blocking form, drill 4 holes slightly larger than the diameter of the rebar. There should be holes made in all 4 sides. Use the architect's prints to get a point of reference or hold location to determine where the door frame is supposed to be. With that data, measure to the center line of the block, horizontally and vertically. Accuracy is critical. Spray paint around the blocking form to mark the location. This will allow rebar or chairs to be placed around the closer cavity so they don't interfere later in the installation. When it is time to pour the rough floor, place the blocking form in the painted spot. Insert frost pins in all 4 corners to keep the form in place horizontally. On the pins, adjust the form to correct the vertical location. Nail the pins to stabilize the block. The nail and pins will keep the form from moving during the concrete pour. Insert short rebar pieces through the holes made in the sides of the block. These should be about 7 inches long. The bars should go in only the thickness of the wood framing. This way, they will not project too far into the cavity. If you are using a styrofoam block, insert the rebar pieces. They should be inserted about 3/4 of an inch into the styrofoam. Use the frost pins to stabilize the foam block. After the concrete is set, remove the frost pins and break out the blocking form. The tips of the short rebar pieces that jut into the concrete void will help to anchor the case setting material to the rough slab. Realize that this floor cavity, a few inches off in any direction, can mean an expensive fix. After the frames are put in place, the hole may need to be repositioned to accommodate the misalignment caused by the rough pour method. Once the cavity is correctly arranged, use a quick spotter kit to set the cement case for the quick set pour.
And that brings us to the end of our presentation for today. We're going to open this up to see if we have any questions. It appears we do have a few questions. Let's see what the questions are. Okay, let me just read through it. The first question is, these videos, actually the videos I showed during this presentation are all available on YouTube. You would just go under Rixson, and Rixson has their own YouTube channel, and you should be able to find all of these presentations. Or not the presentations, but the videos, the Rixson videos. Because a number of these videos I did shorten up for this presentation because they were longer than this and they did go into more detail. But the videos are available. If not, you can contact me directly. My name is Russell. Russell.corriveau@asaabloy.com would be my email address. Len. The next question, are there potential problems in the Midwest with temperature changes and variation? Of course, that needs to be taken into consideration. I know floor closers are used a great deal in a lot of the cities in Chicago and New York City. So obviously they're able to handle that by planning ahead for it. So I'm sure it does need to be taken into consideration, but it can definitely be done because I know that a lot of the big cities have a lot of floor closers. And that actually brings us to the end of our questions for today. Hopefully everyone found it enjoyable. Thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, actually, okay, actually there's another question that just come in. It'll work for 1 3/4 inch thick door. Okay, that's a good question. This person's looking for overhead concealed closers. Let me take a moment now and we'll show you something on concealed overhead closers. For those of you, you can leave at this point if you choose to, or we're just going to go something into a little overhead concealed closers. Okay, so let me just take a quick jump ahead. So here we go. Okay, overhead concealed closers. Yes, Rixson does make these also. We'll just do a quick review here. Okay. Okay, overhead concealed closers are available with both offset and center hung. They can be either used on single or double acting. The model 608 is either a single or a double acting closer. It's also non-handed. It can be used in interior or exterior applications and is designed for moderate traffic. The 608 can handle doors up to 200 pounds and up to 8 feet tall. They are not available. They are available as non-hold open or automatic hold open. And these are designed for 1 3/4 inch thick doors. And of course they have the adjustability. The Model 91 is a single acting offset closer for it's a heavy duty cast iron closer body with forged arms for interior or exterior applications. The Model 91 is designed, once again, for the Model 91 is designed for interior or exterior applications for doors up to about 250 pounds. When it is installed in an aluminum frame, it does require a full 4-inch header on it. The M90 is controlling the door, but is hung on 3/4 inch offset pivots or offset butt hinges. Okay. They also have the 608, which is a center hung, which includes the bottom pivot. The frame, you need to put a door stop on it for a single acting application. The 700 series is single acting and it is handed. This product should always be used with an auxiliary stop. The 800 is double acting and non-handed. Let's see. Let's take a quick look at what it takes to install a Rixson 91 closer, and hopefully this will give you a little of the information you were asking about.
To install the Rixson Model 91 overhead concealed closer, you'll need a Phillips head driver, Allen wrench, tape measure, framing square, and a level. We're installing the 91 closer on a metal door and frame. Our door is hung using Rixson 3/4 inch offset pivots. It's important to first be sure the doors and frames have been templated correctly. Verify that the frame is square using a carpenter square. Check the gaps between the door and frame. They should be approximately 1/16 of an inch at the jamb and the header. Confirm all the dimensions of the cutouts using the supplied templates. Install the closer in the reinforced frame using the mounting screws provided. The mounting plate should be flush with the frame rabbet. Check the position of the arm. It should rest at 15 degrees away from the door side of the closer mounting plate. Next, slide the track assembly components into the track. All track assembly components must be placed in the track before installing the track in the door. The stop block should be mounted towards the hinge side of the track. The longer end of the slider should be pointed toward the hinge end of the track. Install the track in the door using the screws provided. For hold-open models, the hold-open assembly is used instead of the stop block. The slider on the arm connects with the hold-open assembly when the door is opened to the desired degree. Using the adjusting screw at the back side of the hold-open assembly, the force to pull the door closed can be increased or decreased to suit the conditions. Next, with a 1/8 inch hex wrench, completely tighten the latch and sweep adjustments by turning the screws clockwise. With the door open to approximately 45 degrees, rotate the arm over to the door. Align the slider square with the arm square and connect the two using the 1/4 20 by 3/4 inch flathead hex machine screw. Adjust the stop to the desired position and tighten. The spring adjustment from the factory is set at its lowest level. Adjust as necessary. Use a 3/8 hex key to adjust the closing force. To increase the force, turn the hex clockwise. After the closing force has been set high enough to close the door, adjust the sweep, latch, and back check valves. Holes in the mounting plate provide access to the adjustment valve using a 1/8 hex wrench. After the closer is installed and all adjustments are complete, install the removable stop.
Hopefully that gave you some of the information you were looking for. We do have another question. All right, that was for the concealed overhead. And to answer your question, we do not have a class strictly on concealed overhead closers at this point in time. Okay. If you have further questions on this, what I would suggest is calling up Rixson customer support. Rixson has great customer support, and they can actually go into more detail for various applications on what closers they would recommend for you. So I would highly recommend contacting Rixson technical support. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, and join us for other ASA Abloy Academy webinars. Thank you and have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.